When I was still in elementary school, I had a habit of making up scary stories and telling them to my family and friends. I always prefaced them by saying, "This is a scary story I made up. Want to hear it?" My grandfather, in particular, loved listening to my stories. He would listen intently and even get scared, which made me incredibly happy. One day, one of my stories started spreading among my classmates. It was a typical ghost story. If you knocked on a stall door in the boys' restroom after school, you would hear a knock in return. The girls in my class became fascinated, and the rumor quickly spread across the entire grade and eventually the whole school. Some even claimed to have seen a boy standing outside the restroom, beckoning them in. Even when I told them, "It's just a story I made up," they wouldn't believe me. The story took on a life of its own, and soon, groups of students started using the restroom for courage tests. During these courage tests, nothing should have happened. And yet, the kids participating all swore that they heard a knock in response. It caused quite a commotion. I wanted to come forward and admit that I had made the story up, but I was afraid of being shunned by everyone, so I kept quiet. But as time passed, I started wondering if my story had somehow become real, and that thought terrified me. I stopped making up scary stories altogether. Sometime later, my grandfather asked, "You don't tell scary stories anymore, do you?" I burst into tears and told him everything. He listened gently and then shared something with me. "You see," he said, "everyone who heard your story thought it was truly frightening. And in doing so, they created something terrifying themselves. When a scary story spreads, people twist it into something even scarier. And when they do, something that we can't see might take on that form and actually appear. Or it might not be something you can see, it could be something inside your heart. Fear is something that all living beings possess, both humans and animals. And fear can make us see things that aren't really there. It's a part of our instincts. That's why you shouldn't be ashamed of being afraid. If you ever feel afraid, don't act tough, just acknowledge it and stay away. As long as you do that, you won't get into real trouble." I wondered if my grandfather had ever experienced something like that himself, so I asked, "Grandpa, have you ever been really scared before?" That's when he began telling me a story I never expected. "A long time ago," he said, "I lived in a remote mountain village far from here. When I was about your age, maybe a little older, I went into the mountains for a courage test with some friends. The path was lined with Jesus statues, but since I was with my friends, I didn't feel scared at all. But on the way back, one of my friends started knocking over each and every Jesus statue. He said, 'This is boring. This isn't scary at all.' That was the moment I first felt scared. I thought I saw the Jesus statues glaring at me. I got so scared that I ran away, leaving my friend behind. And you know what happened to him? Did he die?" I asked. "No," my grandfather replied. "Nothing happened to him. He came back just fine. But after that day, I never went on courage tests again. That friend of mine, though, he kept going. He started sneaking into sacred shrines, wandering around graveyards, and messing with more Jesus statues. People in the village got fed up with him and started ignoring him. He even started claiming that he had seen a Tengu. He laughed and said, 'Just watch, I'll spread the rumor and make people believe it.' Then, one day, he suddenly disappeared. We searched for him everywhere. Eventually, we found him. At the base of a tall tree deep in the mountains. There were marks on the tree trunk where he had tried to climb up, but it looked like he had slipped and fallen to his death. What a fool. Listen, there are places in this world that people should never step into. Those places are dangerous. For you, that might be the top of a tall wardrobe. Falling from there would be scary, right? It's the same thing. My friend couldn't recognize which places were dangerous. The scary part isn't just that, though. After my friend died, more and more villagers started claiming they had seen a Tengu. Even though I told them my friend had made it all up, they insisted that the Tengu was real. People started panicking, saying it was a curse, a punishment. They even kept watch through the night, building bonfires. The village was filled with rumors and anxiety. And when people feel anxious, they start acting irrationally. One after another, people started getting minor injuries, 4 cases in a row. Just small things, like sprained ankles. But to the villagers, it was proof of the Tengu's wrath. And then the unthinkable happened. Some villagers started saying, "We need to offer a sacrifice to the Tengu, or we'll all be killed." It was nonsense. My friend had died because he fell from a tree, not because of some curse. But the villagers had convinced themselves otherwise. They were about to step into forbidden territory, human life. No one has the right to take another's life. I wasn't afraid of the Tengu. I was terrified of the people in my village. So I ran away. I left that village behind. My grandfather told me this story twice more over the years, always making me promise to never tell my parents. In my family, my father's side has no known relatives. My parents told me it was because my grandfather had eloped with my grandmother, the daughter of a wealthy landowner. But after hearing his story, I wonder if there was more to it. For a while, I considered whether my grandfather had just been telling me a scary story of his own. But I don't think so. Because when he finished his tale, I saw something I never expected: my grandfather, shedding silent tears, his tears falling onto my small hands. Even now, I get teary-eyed just thinking about it. Thank you for reading my story.